My sister didn't just skip my ceremony, she scheduled my erasure like a dinner reservation. While they toasted themselves, a television above their table flipped to a live broadcast, putting my name on the screen in letters big enough to ruin an appetite. But the part that made them freeze wasn't the trophy. It was the surprise segment revealing someone at that table had already tried to profit off my win before the award even touched my hands. My name is Hazel Lawson, and I was standing in the center of a 300-square-foot apartment in Baltimore, Maryland, when the notification that would end my relationship with my family lit up the screen of my phone. The air in the room was stale, recycling the heat from the radiator that clanked in the corner like a dying engine. I was wearing a blazer that I had pulled out of the hamper 3 days in a row. It smelled like dark roast coffee and exhaustion, a scent that had become my personal perfume for the last 6 months. On my laptop screen, the email was still open. The subject line was bold. The logo of the Morrison Foundation was gold. I had read the first sentence 14 times. It confirmed that I was the recipient of this year's Medal for Social Impact Innovation. It was not just a plaque. It was validation. It was the highest honor in my field. The kind of recognition that turned quiet engineers into industry leaders. It came with a grant. It came with a ceremony in Washington, D.C. It came with a national live stream broadcast on the Science and News Network. I looked at the digital clock on the microwave. It was 6 in the evening. In St. Louis, Missouri, it was 5 in the afternoon. My family would be awake. They would be active. My sister, Kelsey, would be finishing her makeup. My mother would be drinking her second glass of iced tea. My father would be sitting in his recliner, scrolling through sports scores. I opened the family group chat. The thread was mostly a shrine to Kelsey. It was filled with photos of her outfits, screenshots of her follower counts, and links to the local lifestyle segments she occasionally hosted. The last message from me was 3 months ago. A picture of my prototype, which had received 0 replies. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. The old, childish hope that refused to die no matter how many times it was starved. I typed. My thumbs hovered over the glass. I deleted the first draft. I did not want to sound desperate. I did not want to sound like I was bragging. I just wanted them to know. I typed again. I won the Morrison Medal. The ceremony is next week in D.C. It is being live-streamed nationwide. I really want you all to be there, or at least watch it. It is the biggest thing that has ever happened to me. I hit send. The bubble turned blue. I stared at the screen. The word delivered appeared. Then, read. I stopped breathing. I could see the 3 gray dots dancing at the bottom of the screen. Someone was typing. The dots pulsed. They vanished. They appeared again. They vanished again. This dance went on for 2 full minutes. 2 minutes is a lifetime when you are waiting for your parents to tell you they are proud of you. I stood in my kitchen, clutching the granite countertop, feeling the cold stones seep into my palms. I imagined my mother gasping. I imagined my father calling me immediately. I imagined Kelsey feeling a spark of sisterly pride. Then the phone buzzed. It was a message from Kelsey. That award sounds stupid. We already have dinner reservations that night. I stared at the words. Stupid. She had not asked what the award was for. She had not asked what the Morrison Medal meant. She had reduced 5 years of sleepless nights, 3 years of research, and the culmination of my life's work into a single, dismissive adjective, stupid. A second message popped up. This one was from my mother. Don't be angry, honey. I promised your sister we would go to Copper and Vine. It is her celebratory dinner for hitting 10,000 followers. 10,000 followers on a social media app versus a National Innovation Award for designing mobility aids for the disabled. The scale was balanced in their minds, and I was the one who weighed less. My father did not type a word. He did not write a sentence. A small notification appeared at the bottom of Kelsey's message. Dad liked, "That award sounds stupid." He had tapped the screen, selected the thumbs-up icon, and sealed his approval of my erasure. I stood there in the silence of my apartment. The radiator clanked again. Outside, A siren wailed in the distance. I felt a strange sensation wash over me. It was not the hot tears of a teenager who felt left out. It was not the burning rage of a 20-year-old demanding to be seen. It was cold. It was absolute. It was the feeling of a door locking, the bolt sliding home with a heavy, final thud. For 26 years, I had been auditing a class I was never going to pass. I had been trying to earn a degree in their affection, paying tuition in compliance and silence, hoping that if I just achieved enough, if I was just impressive enough, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Kelsey. But they did not want me to be impressive. My success was an inconvenience to their schedule. My milestone was a distraction from their dinner. My hands were shaking, but when I caught my reflection in the dark window of the microwave, my face was terrifyingly calm. I looked like a stranger. I looked like someone who had nothing left to lose. I picked up the phone one last time. I did not scream. I did not beg. I did not type out a paragraph explaining how much they were hurting me. I typed a lie, or perhaps it was the first honest thing I had ever said to them, because it acknowledged the reality they had chosen. No problem. Have a fun dinner. I put the phone face down on the counter. The metal casing made a sharp click against the granite. If they still viewed my dreams as a side act, as a nuisance that threatened to overshadow their carefully curated narrative of Kelsey's brilliance, then fine. I would not ask them to buy a ticket to the show again. I would walk onto that stage in Washington, D.C. alone. I would accept that heavy gold medal alone. I would stand under the spotlight alone. And when the applause started, I would not look for their faces in the crowd. I walked over to my closet and pulled out my suitcase. I packed my black dress. I packed my heels. I packed my notes for the acceptance speech. I worked with mechanical precision. Fold, tuck, zip. I was an engineer. I fixed broken things, and in that moment, I realized I could not fix this family, so I had to fix the way I operated within it. I had to disconnect the circuit. The week passed in a blur of preparations. I flew to Washington, D.C., quietly. I did not check the group chat. I did not answer the casual, guilt-free texts my mother sent about the weather, pretending she hadn't just gutted me. And then came the night, while I was standing backstage in a cavernous auditorium, listening to the hum of 1,000 people taking their seats, nearly 800 miles away in St. Louis, Missouri. The Lawson family was making their entrance. It was 7 p.m, Central Standard Time. They arrived at Copper and Vine, the trendiest restaurant in the city, the kind of place where the lighting was gold and the menu had no prices. Kelsey was wearing a dress that cost more than my first car. She handed her coat to the host with the air of royalty. My mother was beaming, adjusting her pearls. My father walked behind them, chest puffed out, playing the role of the patriarch of a successful, happy clan. They were seated at the best table in the house, a semi-private booth that offered a view of the entire dining room, ensuring that everyone could see them. They ordered expensive wine. They ordered appetizers. They laughed loudly. The performative laughter of people who know they are being watched and want to ensure the audience knows they are having a better time than anyone else. Kelsey pulled out her phone. She always documented the happiness before she actually felt it. She took a selfie with my parents, tilting her head just so, catching the ambient light to highlight her cheekbones. She posted it to her story immediately. The caption read, simply and brutally, "Family dinner night, no mention of me, no mention of the fact that her younger sister was about to go live on national television." It was a deliberate curation of reality. In her world, I did not exist. In her world, this dinner was the only event that mattered on the calendar. She put the phone down, satisfied. The waiter poured the wine. My father raised his glass for a toast. My mother clinked hers against his. They smiled at Kelsey. They were a closed loop, a perfect circle of 3, impenetrable and self-satisfied. What they did not notice was the large, high-definition television mounted on the wall directly above their line of sight. Copper and Vine was an upscale establishment, but they kept a single screen on in the main dining area, usually muted and tuned to a 24-hour news cycle or calm stock market updates, purely for ambient movement. Tonight, However, the channel had been changed. The manager had switched it to the Science and News Network because of the high-profile nature of the broadcast. As my family sipped their Pinot Noir, oblivious and comfortable, the program on the screen shifted. The commercial break ended. The generic news intro music played. The screen dissolved from a graphic of the globe to a live shot of the auditorium in Washington, D.C. The camera panned over the audience. It swept across the stage, and then huge block letters appeared on the lower third of the screen, bright blue against white. Up next, the Morrison Medal Ceremony, and below that, in even larger font, honoring Hazel Lawson. My name floated in high definition right above my father's head. It hovered over my mother's carefully sprayed hair. It loomed over Kelsey's shoulder. They did not see it yet. They were too busy discussing the appetizers. They were too busy celebrating their localized fame to notice that national recognition was staring down at them from 10 feet in the air. I did not know the TV was there. I did not know they were sitting underneath it. I was just a girl in a dressing room, trying to stop her hands from shaking, telling herself that being alone was a strength. I did not know that the universe has a wicked sense of humor, or that karma sometimes moves faster than a satellite signal. The broadcast cut to the anchor. She looked serious. She looked into the camera with that intense, gripping gaze that news anchors practice in the mirror. "Tonight," she said, her voice crisp, "we are honoring a young woman who is changing the way we think about mobility, but before she accepts her award, we have a story that you will not believe, a story about where she came from and the people who claim to support her." My family and Saint. Louis reached for their bread rolls. Kelsey laughed at something my father said. On the screen above them, a picture of teenage me appeared. It was a photo from high school, me in the garage, covered in grease, holding a wrench. Then, the camera on the TV cut to a live feed reporter standing outside the very auditorium where I was waiting. "We are live in D.C., the reporter said. But the real drama might be happening in a restaurant in Missouri. The volume on the TV in the restaurant was low, just a murmur, but the visuals were undeniable. And as the bread basket was passed around table 4, a man at the adjacent table looked up. He squinted at the screen. Then he looked at the family sitting next to him. He looked back at the screen. He looked back at Kelsey. He nudged his wife. He pointed. The wife looked up. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. She looked at the TV, where my name was blazing. She looked at my parents, who were blissfully buttering their bread. "Excuse me," the woman whispered, loud enough to carry across the small gap between the tables. Isn't that your name up there?" Kelsey stopped. Her smile faltered. Just a fraction. She turned her head. She followed the woman's finger. She looked up. And that is when the dinner reservation turned into an arraignment. To understand why I stood alone in that dressing room in Washington, D.C., you have to go back to a 2-story beige house on a cul-de-sac in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That house was not a home, it was a theater. And for as long as I could remember, the marquee only had one name on it. I grew up 5 years behind Kelsey. In most families, birth order is just a matter of logistics. But in the Lawson household, it was a hierarchy. Kelsey was the sun, a blazing, volatile star around which our entire domestic galaxy spun. She was loud, she was charismatic, and she had an insatiable hunger for attention that she consumed like oxygen. I was the moon, visible only when the sun went down, and even then, I merely reflected the light of the rest of the family. We lived by a silent, terrified contract. If Kelsey was happy, we ordered pizza and watched movies. If Kelsey was sad, the house went into mourning. We walked on tiptoes. We spoke in whispers. We adjusted our own emotional thermostats to accommodate the weather system that was my sister. I learned very early on that my feelings were not facts. They were inconveniences. I remember the spring of my 8th grade year. I had spent 4 months working on a science fair project about renewable energy efficiency. I had built a miniature wind turbine from scrap metal and wire I had scavenged from the junkyard. It was ugly, industrial, and utterly functional. I won first place in the state regionals. I came home holding a blue rosette ribbon that was the size of a dinner plate, my chest swelling with a pride I had never allowed myself to feel before. I walked into the kitchen. My mother was at the counter, flipping through a catalog. I placed the ribbon on the granite island, right on top of a spread in the magazine. I won. I said, I got first place. My mother looked up. She smiled. But it was the kind of smile you give a cashier when they hand you your change. It did not reach her eyes. That is nice. Hazel, she said, put it on the fridge. She did not ask how the turbine worked. She did not ask about the judges. Because in that exact second, the back door slammed open and Kelsey walked in. She was a senior in high school then, and she was crying, not the quiet tears of real grief, but the loud, gasping sobs of a performance. She had not been selected for the lead in the school musical. She had been cast as the understudy. My mother's head snapped toward the door. The catalog was forgotten. The blue ribbon was pushed aside, sliding across the granite until it fell onto the floor. My mother rushed to Kelsey, wrapping her in her arms, cooing soft words of comfort, promising her that the drama teacher was jealous, that the casting was rigged, that she was too beautiful for the role anyway. I stood there for a minute, looking at my ribbon on the linoleum. I picked it up. I did not put it on the fridge. I took it to my room and put it in the bottom of my sock drawer. That night, we ordered Chinese takeout because Kelsey needed comfort food. No one remembered to ask me what I wanted. No one remembered I had won anything at all. That was the day I perfected the art of emotional neatness. I realized that to survive in this family, I had to be compact. I had to be low maintenance. I became the daughter who never needed a ride because I walked. I became the daughter who never needed help with homework because I figured it out myself. I became the daughter who never cried because I knew there were no tissues left for me. The only place I felt like a solid, three-dimensional human being was in the garage. My father used the garage to store his golf clubs and a lawnmower he rarely used, but in the back corner, behind stacks of old holiday decorations, I carved out a sanctuary. It smelled of motor oil, sawdust, and stale gasoline. To most people, it was a mess. To me, it was paradise. I started taking things apart. It began with a broken toaster. I unscrewed the casing, laying the screws out in a perfect line. I traced the circuitry. I understood how the lever engaged the heating element. I fixed it. Then I moved on to a radio, then a lawn edger, then the engine of an old motorcycle my neighbor was throwing away. There was a purity in machines that humans lacked. If a circuit was broken, you could solder it. If a gear was stripped, you could replace it. Machines did not lie. They did not play favorites. They did not promise to take you to dinner and then forget because their other cylinder was having a bad day. In the logic of gears and wires, I found the fairness I was starving for inside the house. My father, however, viewed my sanctuary with a mix of confusion and disdain. He was a man who valued appearances, and a daughter with grease under her fingernails did not fit the aesthetic of the Lawson family brand. He would come into the garage, holding a beer, watching me wrestle with an alternator. "Hazel," he would say, leaning against the doorframe, "you need to stop dreaming. You are spending all this time on junk. You need to do something that makes real money. Real money, not this tinkering." He would say this on a Tuesday, and then, on a Wednesday, I would hear him on the phone with Kelsey. She had decided she wanted to be a lifestyle influencer, or a model, or an actress. The title changed every 6 months. She needed headshots. She needed a website. She needed a branding coach. I heard him read out the credit card number. $1,500 for a photography session, $2,000 for a workshop in Los Angeles. He handed over money to Kelsey like he was paying a ransom. Convinced that her success was just one check away, he was investing in a lottery ticket. Meanwhile, I was building the machine that printed the tickets, and he told me I was wasting my time. He could not see the value in what I did because it was not shiny. It did not come with applause. It was dirty, quiet work, and in the Lawson house, if you were not making noise, You were not making progress. By the time I was a senior in high school, I had built a wall around myself so thick that I barely spoke at dinner. I observed them like a sociologist studying a primitive tribe. I watched my mother edit Kelsey's photos for social media, smoothing out her skin, brightening her eyes. I watched my father nod along to Kelsey's monologues about her haters. I ate my peas. I washed my dish. I went to the garage. Then came the letter. I had applied to engineering programs in secret. I had paid the application fees with money I earned fixing neighbors' air conditioners. When the acceptance letter from the university came, offering me a full scholarship for mechanical engineering, I felt a rush of terrified exhilaration. It was my escape hatch. I decided to tell them at dinner. It was a Tuesday. Kelsey was in a good mood because a local boutique had reposted her story. The atmosphere was safe. I waited for a lull in the conversation. I got into the engineering program. I said, I kept my voice steady. I got a full scholarship. I am moving in August. The table went quiet. My father chewed his steak. My mother looked at me, blinking, as if I had just announced I was joining a circus. Engineering? My father asked. Like, construction? Mechanical engineering, I said. Designing systems. Machines. My mother let out a small, confused laugh. But Hazel, that is so heavy. It is a lot of math, isn't it? Are you sure you want to do that? You know you get headaches when you read too much. She was rewriting my history in real time, inventing weaknesses to keep me in the box she understood. Then Kelsey chimed in. She took a sip of her diet soda and smirked. So, you are going to be, like, a machine girl? She asked. She said it with a lilt in her voice, transforming the words into a caricature. She conjured an image of me in oversized coveralls, covered in grime, unlovable and uncool. Machine girl, she repeated, giggling. That is so you? Hazel, my father chuckled. Then my mother chuckled. And then they were all laughing. It was a light, breezy sound. The sound of a family sharing a joke, but I was the punchline. They were not laughing with me. They were laughing at the absurdity of me thinking I could be anything other than their prop. I looked at them. I looked at my father, who wouldn't pay for my textbooks, but paid for Kelsey's hair extensions. I looked at my mother, who worried about my headaches but never asked about my dreams. I looked at Kelsey, who was already bored with the topic and checking her phone. I did not laugh. I did not get angry. I just memorized the sound of their laughter. I filed it away in my brain, right next to the image of the blue ribbon on the floor. I realized then that I could stay in Tulsa and spend the rest of my life trying to explain myself to people who were committed to misunderstanding me. Or I could leave. I could go to a place where machine girl was not an insult, but a title. I smiled at them. It was the same polite, empty smile I would use years later when they told me my award was stupid. Yeah, I said, I guess I am the machine girl. I left Tulsa 3 months later. I packed my life into 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. My father did not drive me to the airport because Kelsey had a minor dental surgery scheduled for the same morning, and my mother needed moral support in the waiting room. I took a taxi. As the car pulled away from the beige house, I looked back at the window of my room. It was already dark. They had not even left the porch light on for me. I sat in the back of that taxi, watching the flat Oklahoma landscape roll by, and I made a promise to myself. I would work harder than anyone else. I would build things that mattered. I would become so undeniable, so formidable in my field, that one day my name would be worth more than their approval. I did not know then that it would take 8 years. I did not know that I would end up designing a device that would change the lives of thousands of people. And I certainly did not know that the family who laughed at the machine girl would one day try to sell tickets to her success. All I knew, as the plane lifted off the tarmac, was that I was finally breathing air that didn't belong to my sister. I was free, but freedom, I would learn, has a cost, and the bill was going to arrive on a dinner plate in St. Louis, Missouri. Life after Tulsa was not a movie montage of immediate glamour. It was a grind. It was a 4-year blur of fluorescent lights, instant ramen, and the smell of soldering iron smoke. I lived in a studio apartment that was essentially a closet with a window, located 3 blocks from the engineering building. My schedule was a mathematical equation designed to maximize productivity and minimize cost. I woke up at 5 in the morning. I studied. I went to lectures. I worked a shift at the library shelving books to pay for groceries. I went to the lab. I slept for 5 hours. I repeated the cycle. For the first time in my life, I was exhausted, but I was not heavy. The weight of the Lawson family expectations was gone. No one was asking me to shrink so my sister could look taller. No one was asking me to be quiet so my sister could be heard. In the silence of the library stacks and the hum of the machine shop, I found a version of myself that had room to breathe. I stopped being the shadow. I became the operator. I graduated at the top of my class, but I did not walk at commencement. I had the diploma mailed to me because I was already working. I had landed a junior research position at Ironvale Mobility Labs. Ironvale was not one of those trendy tech companies with beanbag chairs and kombucha on tap. It was a serious place. It was a mid-sized research and development firm located in an industrial park just outside of Baltimore. The building looked like a concrete bunker, and the inside smelled of rubber, lubricant, and intense concentration. We designed assistive technology, wheelchairs, prosthetic attachments, rehabilitation exoskeletons. It was unglamorous, difficult, and absolutely vital work. I started at the bottom. My job was to stress test materials. I spent 8 hours a day running machines that bent metal bars until they snapped, recording the data points of failure. It was repetitive, but I loved it. I was learning the limits of the physical world. 6 months into the job, I noticed a pattern in our user feedback logs. We were designing incredible, high-tech wheelchairs, but the users were complaining about the same thing over and not the technology itself. But the logistics, getting a heavy motorized chair into a standard sedan was a nightmare. The existing ramps were too steep or too expensive. The hydraulic lifts cost $3,000 and required professional installation. I stayed late. I stopped going home at 6 in the evening and started staying until 10 at night. I went to the scrap bin behind the loading dock. I pulled out discarded aluminum tubing, high-tension springs, and latch mechanisms. I wanted to build something simple. No hydraulics, no motors, just pure mechanics. I wanted to use leverage and gravity to do the heavy lifting. I called it the snap rail. The concept was a telescoping track system that clipped onto the frame of a standard car door. It used a counterweighted pivot point. He was a man who smiled once a leap year. He had a PhD in biomechanics and a reputation for shredding junior engineers who wasted his time. He walked over to the snap rail. He did not say a word. He inspected the welds. He tested the latch mechanism. He ran his hand along the track. Then he looked at me. "Show me," he said. I stepped up. I unlocked the safety. I engaged the pivot. The mechanism glided perfectly. He watched it reset. He looked at the complexity of the internal spring system, and then he looked at the simplicity of the user interface. "How much would this cost to manufacture?" he asked. I swallowed. Using standard aluminum and injection-molded clips, about $80 per unit. I said, "The cheapest competitor on the market is $600, doctor." Beck nodded slowly. He did not high-five me. He did not throw a party. He gave me something much more valuable. He gave me professional respect. "You have the perspective of someone who truly understands the user," he said. "Most engineers try to show off how smart they are. You are trying to make life easier. That is a rare distinction." Lawson. He authorized a pilot run that afternoon, a week later. I did something that felt terrifyingly out of character. I recorded a video. It was not a curated story for social media. I did not use a ring light. I did not put on makeup. I set my phone on a tripod in the lab. The background was a gray cinder block wall. I stood in front of the camera, wearing my safety glasses and a shop apron. "Hi," I said. "My name is Hazel. This is a prototype for a loading system I am working on. It is designed for people who do not have a van with a lift." I demonstrated the snap rail. The video was 45 seconds long. No music, no fast cuts, just the sound of the metal clicking and the chair sliding into the mock-up car trunk. I uploaded it to a few technical forums and a subreddit dedicated to disability advocacy. I titled it, Low-Cost Mechanical Loader Prototype. Feedback wanted. Then I went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was hot to the touch. It had been vibrating all night. The video had not just been watched, it had been devoured. It had 50,000 views, then 100,000, then 500,000. The comments were not the kind of vapid praise my sister chased. They were visceral. They were desperate. One user wrote, "I have not been able to drive myself anywhere in 4 years because I cannot load my chair. This would give me my life back." Another wrote, "Please tell me where I can buy this. I am crying watching this. I cannot afford the hydraulic lift." The video jumped from Reddit to Twitter. A disability rights advocate with 2 million followers shared it. The caption read, "This is what real innovation looks like. Simple, accessible, dignity-focused." I walked into work that day, and the receptionist looked at me with wide eyes. "Doctor?" Beck called me into his office. He had a stack of printouts on his desk. "We have inquiries from 3 nonprofit organizations," he said, "and an innovation fund in San Francisco wants you to fly out and present the design. They are talking about a grant to expedite manufacturing." I sat in the chair opposite him, feeling a buzz in my veins that was better than any drug. It was the feeling of utility. I had not just made something, I had made a difference. The world, the real world, not the curated bubble of my family, was responding to me. They saw value in the machine girl. That evening, riding the high of the day, I made a mistake. I let the old instinct take over. I wanted to share it. I wanted to bring my tribute to the tribal leaders and see if I finally earned a seat at the fire. I called my mother. She answered on the 3rd ring. The background noise was loud. I could hear clinking silverware and music. "Hi, honey," she said. She sounded distracted. "We are just looking at menus. What is up?" "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Something amazing happened. Remember that project I told you about? The wheelchair loader?" "Uh-huh." She said, "The metal thing?" I posted a video of it. I said, "It went viral. Not like silly viral, real viral. People are sharing it everywhere. A major foundation wants to fly me to San Francisco to present it. They want to fund it." There was a pause on the line. I held my breath. This was it. This was the moment she would realize I was doing something big. "That is cute." "Hazel," she said. "Cute." The word hit me like a physical slap. Cute was a word you used for a toddler's drawing. Cute was a word you used for a dog wearing a sweater. It was a word that diminished. It took a breakthrough in assistive technology and reduced it to a hobby. "That is really nice," she continued, her voice pivoting effortlessly. "Speaking of viral, you will not believe what happened to Kelsey today." I gripped the phone tighter. She got a DM from that water bottle company. She said, "The one with the crystals in the bottom?" They want her to be a brand ambassador. They are going to send her free product and a discount code for her followers. It is a huge opportunity. "Hazel, we are looking at contract details right now." I stood in my silent apartment, on my laptop screen. Emails were pouring in from engineers, doctors, and patients thanking me for my work. In my ear, my mother was talking about crystal water bottles. The contrast was so sharp it was almost funny. I had solved a logistics problem for thousands of people. Kelsey was going to sell overpriced plastic, and in my mother's eyes, Kelsey was the CEO, and I was just the kid playing with blocks. "That sounds great." "Mom," I said. My voice was flat. "I know, right?" she said. "Okay, honey. The waiter is here. We have to order. Good luck with your little trip." The line went dead. I lowered the phone. I looked at the dark screen. I did not cry. I did not feel the familiar sting of rejection. Instead, I felt a calcification. The final soft part of me that was tethered to them hardened into bone. I realized then that they were never going to understand. They were speaking a different language. They valued visibility. I valued impact. They valued the appearance of success. I valued the mechanics of it. To them, I would always be the supporting character, the background noise, the cute distraction. But as I looked at the flood of support on my computer screen, I realized something else. Their understanding was no longer required. I did not need them to clap for me. The world was already clapping. I sat down at my desk. I opened the email from the Innovation Fund. I hit reply. I accepted the invitation. I accepted the challenge. I accepted that I was Hazel Lawson, the engineer, the inventor, the machine girl. And I was going to San Francisco. I closed the family group chat. I archived the conversation. I turned off notifications. Let them have their dinner. Let them have their water bottles and their hashtags. I had work to do. And for the first time, I knew exactly who I was doing it for. It wasn't for them. It was for the person who commented that they just wanted to drive their own car again. I picked up my pen and went back to the blueprints. The silence in the apartment didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like a runway. The notification that changed the trajectory of my life did not come with fanfare. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, accompanied by the standard, polite chime of my email inbox. I was sitting at my desk at Iron Vale, reviewing stress test data for a new prosthetic ankle joint. My coffee had gone cold. My eyes were tired. I clicked the notification. The screen filled with the Morrison Foundation letterhead. "Dear Ms. Lawson," it began. I read the first paragraph. Then I read it again. I stopped breathing. The air conditioning in the office seemed to cut out, leaving me in a vacuum of sudden, sharp clarity. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as this year's recipient of the Morrison Medal for Social Impact Innovation." The Morrison Medal. In the world of engineering and design, this was not just a pat on the back. It was a knighthood. It was the kind of award that appeared in the first line of an obituary 60 years later. It came with a $50,000 grant and a ceremony in Washington, D.C. that would be broadcast live on the National Science and News Network. I leaned back in my chair. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with an adrenaline rush so potent it felt like electricity. I looked around the office. My colleagues were typing, drinking water, staring at monitors. They did not know that the tectonic plates of my career had just shifted. I needed to tell someone. The instinct was immediate and biological, despite everything. Despite the years of being the machine girl, despite the cute comments, despite the hierarchy of the Lawson household, I still had that primitive desire to run back to the cave and show the tribe my kill. I picked up my phone. I opened the family group chat. The last message was from 3 days ago. It was a link from Kelsey to a poll asking which shade of beige she should paint her living room. My mother had voted for sand dollar. My father had voted for oatmeal. I took a breath. I typed carefully. I wanted to be precise. I wanted them to understand the scale of this. "I have some big news," I wrote. "I just won the Morrison Medal. It is the highest honor in my field. The ceremony is next week in Washington, D.C. It is going to be live-streamed on national television. I really want you all to be there, or at least watch it. This is important to me." I added the link to the event page. I added the date and the time, 7 in the evening, Eastern Standard Time. I hit send. I set the phone on the desk. Face up. I stared at it. 1 minute passed. In that minute, I allowed myself a dangerous fantasy. I imagined my mother calling, her voice high with excitement, asking about flight details. I imagined my father finally understanding that tinkering was actually high-level engineering. I imagined Kelsey, for once, saying, "Good job, little sister." The phone buzzed. It was Kelsey. "That award sounds stupid," she wrote. "Dinner night." I blinked. I read it again. The words were so blunt, so childish, that they almost didn't make sense. Stupid award, dinner night, before I could process the insult. My mother's bubble appeared. "Don't be angry, honey," she typed. "We have already booked a table at Copper and Vine. Kelsey wants the whole family together to celebrate her new brand deal. I promised her everyone would be there." Copper and Vine. It was a bistro in St. Louis. 800 miles away from where I would be standing on a stage accepting a medal. They were not just declining the invitation to come to They were declining the invitation to even turn on a television. I waited for my father. He was the tiebreaker. He was the one who always talked about hard work and earning your keep. Surely, he would see the value in a national award. A small icon appeared next to Kelsey's message, a thumbs up. My father had liked, "That award sounds stupid." He hadn't typed a word. He hadn't asked a question. With a single tap of his thumb, he had reinforced the family constitution. Kelsey was the protagonist, and I was the extra. If my scene clashed with her scene, I was cut from the script. I looked at the phone for a long time. The anger I expected didn't come. Instead, a cold, surgical calm settled over me. It was the same feeling I got when I analyzed a broken machine. I identified the point of failure. The failure was not me. The failure was the system. The Lawson family dynamic was a closed loop of narcissism and enablement, and I was the friction they were trying to eliminate. I did not type a paragraph of defense. I did not explain that the Morrison Medal was more prestigious than a discount code for crystal water bottles. I did not beg. "No problem," I typed. "Have a fun dinner." I locked the phone. I went to the travel website on my browser. I selected one adult. I booked a flight to Washington, D.C., leaving on Tuesday morning. I booked a hotel room at the Willard, a historic hotel I had always wanted to see. I paid extra for a room with a view. I did not ask for a reimbursement from the family account. I used my own money. The money I earned solving problems they didn't understand. The next few days were a countdown. I functioned on autopilot. I went to work. I smiled at my colleagues who congratulated me. I went to a tailor to fit the black dress I had bought. It was sleek, professional, and commanded respect. I stood in front of the mirror in the fitting room, the pins scratching my skin, and practiced my speech. "I would like to thank the committee," I whispered to my reflection. "I would like to thank Dr. Beck." I did not practice thanking my parents. I cut that line from the draft. It was an edit that hurt, like debriding a wound, but it was necessary to prevent infection. The day before my flight, I was sitting in my apartment, packing my suitcase. My laptop was open on the bed, playing a playlist of instrumental focus music. A notification slid across the top right corner of the screen. It was an email. The subject line was odd. "Urgent. Verification of ownership. Hazel Lawson, Mobility." I frowned. I clicked on it. The email was from a generic address, something that looked like a legal service automation. "Dear owner," it read, "we require your electronic signature to finalize the trademark registration for Hazel Lawson Mobility and the associated LLC filing. Please confirm your identity to proceed with the asset transfer." I stared at it. Hazel Lawson Mobility? I had never registered a company with that name. I worked for Ironvale. The snap rail was patented under Ironvale, with my name listed as the inventor. I didn't have a personal brand. I didn't have an LLC. I hovered my mouse over the delete button. It looked like phishing. It looked like one of those scams that scrape the names of award winners and tried to trick them into paying for fake business registrations. I had seen it happen to other engineers. They preyed on the sudden visibility. "Spam," I muttered. I archived the email without replying. I didn't have time to deal with internet bots. I had a speech to memorize. I had a life to start. I finished packing. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was final, like a zipper closing on a body bag. The next morning, I took an Uber to the airport. The driver was a chatty man who asked me where I was going. "Washington, D.C. I said, "For work." "Big meeting?" he asked. Something like that. I said I didn't tell him about the medal. I didn't want to explain it. I was hoarding the joy now, protecting it from being tainted. I sat at the gate, waiting for boarding Group B. I pulled out my phone one last time before switching to airplane mode. I opened Instagram. It was a masochistic reflex. Kelsey's story was at the top of the feed. The ring around her profile picture was glowing pink. I tapped it. It was a video of her holding a glass of champagne. She was in the back seat of a car. presumably on her way to a pre-celebration lunch. The caption was written in a swirling, elegant font. "Family first," it said. "So excited for our big dinner tonight. Love my support system," I laughed. It was a short, dry sound that made the woman sitting next to me look up from her book. Family first. It was the ultimate gaslight. She was using the concept of family to justify excluding me. She was celebrating her support system while actively dismantling mine. I turned off my phone. I didn't verify the flight mode. I just powered it down completely. I wanted to be unreachable. The flight was smooth. I watched the clouds drift by below the wing. I thought about the laws of aerodynamics: lift, weight, thrust, and drag. For years, my family had been the drag. They were the resistance force pulling me back, slowing me down, demanding more energy just to stay airborne. As the plane began its descent into Reagan National Airport, I saw the monuments rising from the ground. The Washington Monument stood like a white needle against the gray sky. The Capitol dome was massive and imposing. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was an ache, sharp and deep, mourning the little girl in Tulsa who just wanted her mom to put her ribbon on the fridge. But beneath the ache, there was something else, a lightness. I was landing in a city where no one knew I was the machine girl. I was landing in a place where I was just Hazel Lawson, Morrison medalist. I walked off the plane and into the terminal. The air smelled different here. It smelled of bureaucracy and old stone and power. I retrieved my bag from the carousel. I walked out to the curb and hailed a taxi. "The Willard," I told the driver. He nodded and merged into traffic. As we drove across the bridge, leaving the airport behind, I looked out the window at the Potomac River. The water was gray and choppy. Tonight, my family would be sitting at Copper and Vine in St. Louis. They would be ordering appetizers. They would be looking at their phones. They would be congratulating themselves on being the Lawsons. And tonight, I would be on a stage, under lights that were not meant to flatter my complexion, but to illuminate my work. I leaned back against the seat. I was alone. I was terrified. And I was absolutely 100% right to be here. The string had been pulled taut for 26 years. Tonight, it wasn't going to snap. I was going to cut it. I arrived at the hotel. The lobby was grand, filled with marble columns and fresh flowers. The concierge greeted me by name. "Miss Lawson," he said. "Congratulations on your award. We saw the notice in the post." I stopped. A stranger knew. A stranger cared enough to mention it. "Thank you," I said. My voice was steady. I went up to my room. I hung my black dress in the closet. I placed my notes on the nightstand. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. I was ready. Let them have their dinner. I was about to feast, but I still didn't know about the email. I didn't know that while I was staring at the Washington Monument, a legal document was being processed in a clerk's office, stamped with a digital signature that claimed to be mine. I didn't know that the spam I had ignored was actually the sound of a trap snapping shut. I only felt the relief of the present, the future, with all its legal storm, was waiting for tomorrow, for now. There was just me, the dress, and the silence of a room that I had paid for myself. The backstage area of the Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C. was colder than I expected. It was a deep, industrial chill that seeped through the thin fabric of my black dress and settled into my marrow. I was standing behind a heavy velvet curtain, clutching my index card so tightly that the edges were beginning to curl against my damp palms. The air smelled of hairspray, dust, and the ozone scent of high-powered stage lights. I could hear the master of ceremonies speaking on the other side of the velvet barrier. His voice was booming, amplified by a sound system that cost more than my entire college education. "And now," he said, his voice dropping to a register of solemn respect, "we turn our attention to the recipient of the Morrison Medal. This is a story that begins not in a high-tech laboratory, but in a small, unheated garage in Tulsa, Oklahoma." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it, the moment of validity, the moment the invisible girl became visible. "Please welcome," the announcer continued. The inventor of the snap rail system, Hazel Lawson. The curtain parted. The light hit me first. It was a physical force, a wall of white brilliance that blinded me for a fraction of a second. I stepped forward. My heels clicked against the polished wood of the stage floor. The sound was sharp and rhythmic. Click, click, click. Then came the sound. It started as a ripple in the front rows and surged backward, rising into a crashing wave of applause. 2,000 people were clapping. They were standing. I squinted against the glare and saw the silhouette of the audience, a sea of dark shapes honoring the work I had done in the dark. I walked to the podium. The medal was waiting on a velvet cushion. It was heavy gold, suspended from a navy blue ribbon. The presenter, a Nobel laureate I had studied in textbooks, smiled at me and placed it around my neck. The weight of it settled on my chest, grounding me. At that exact moment, 800 miles away, the atmosphere was very different. I know what happened next, not because I was there, but because the internet remembers everything. I have watched the footage enough times to memorize the grain of the wood on the table and the condensation on the wine glasses. At Copper and Vine in St. Louis, the mood was golden and hazy. The restaurant was operating at peak volume. Silverware clattered against china. The low hum of conversations filled the air. My family was seated at the prime booth, the one with the leather banquette that gave them a view of the entire room. Kelsey was mid-sentence. She was holding a forkful of sea bass, gesturing with it as she explained her new content strategy to my parents. My mother was nodding, her eyes fixed on Kelsey's face with that familiar look of adoration. My father was pouring another glass of Cabernet, looking content. They were a portrait of suburban success. They were completely unaware that the large, 80-inch flat-screen television mounted high on the wall behind the bar was about to betray them. Usually, the TV at Copper and Vine played silent stock footage of vineyards or muted golf tournaments. But tonight was different. The manager, a man who prided himself on keeping his establishment culturally relevant, had set the television to auto-switch to the National Science and News Network for the broadcast. He knew the Morrison Medal was being awarded. He knew it was a moment of national pride. So, just as I leaned into the microphone in DCOC, the screen in St. Louis flickered. The calm images of rolling green golf courses vanished. In their place, the sharp, high-definition feed of the ceremony cut in. The volume was not muted. The manager had turned it up, wanting the patrons to hear the acceptance speech. My face filled the 80-inch screen. It was a close-up, capturing every detail. The stray hair on my forehead, the shine of the medal, the terrifying calmness in my eyes. The audio cut through the restaurant chatter. "This is a historic night." The commentator's voice rang out, clear and authoritative. At table 4, a man dining with his wife looked up. He frowned. He looked at the screen. Then he turned his head and looked at the booth where my family was sitting. "Hey," the man whispered. His wife looked up. "That is the girl," he said. "That is the girl from the news." Slowly, the noise in the immediate vicinity of my family began to die down. It was a contagious silence, spreading from table to table as people realized the connection. On the screen, a massive graphic appeared in the lower third of the frame. It was bold. It was blue. Hazel Lawson, Morrison Medal winner. My father was the first to notice the shift in the room. He stopped chewing. He felt the eyes on him. He looked around, confused, and then he followed the gaze of the room up to the bar. He saw me. His jaw went slack. The fork in his hand lowered slowly to the plate, making a soft clink that sounded like a gunshot in the sudden quiet. My mother looked up next. Her hand flew to her mouth. She froze. It was the freeze response of a prey animal realizing there is nowhere to run. Kelsey was the last to turn. She saw our parents staring at the TV. She spun around in her seat, annoyed that the attention had drifted away from her story about the sea bass. She looked at the screen. Her eyes went wide. For the first time in her life, she was looking at a screen that she could not control, and her sister was the star. But the universe was not done with them. The knife was in. but it had not yet been twisted. On stage in D.C., I had not yet started my speech. The producer of the show, a man with a flair for emotional storytelling, had prepared a surprise segment to run before I spoke. "We have a special treat tonight," the announcer said. His voice boomed through the auditorium speakers and echoed out of the TV in the restaurant. "We know that behind every great innovator is a support system, and although Hazel's family could not be here in Washington tonight, we wanted to acknowledge them." The feed on the screen cut away from my face. A montage began to play. It was a slideshow of photos, but they were not photos I had provided. They were photos my mother had sent to the local newspaper years ago when she was trying to get Kelsey featured for a charity drive, and I happened to be in the background. There was a photo of teenage me in the garage, looking greasy and tired. There was a photo of the whole family, with Kelsey in the center in a pageant dress and me on the edge, half out of the frame, and then the voiceover delivered the blow that would shatter the dinner party. "We understand that the Lawson family is celebrating this incredible achievement together at a special viewing dinner in St. Louis tonight." The producer had assumed, or perhaps my mother, when declining a press inquiry earlier in the week, had lied to save face. She had likely told a reporter, "Oh, we cannot make it to D.C. We are having a big family celebration here." The text on the screen changed. "The Lawson family, celebrating in St. Louis." The camera in the restaurant was not part of the broadcast, but the eyes of 50 diners were. They looked at the screen, which claimed the family was celebrating. Then they looked at the booth. They saw my father, whose face was a mask of shock. They saw my mother, who looked like she was about to be sick. They saw Kelsey, who was gripping her wine glass so hard her knuckles were white. There were no balloons. There was no cake with my name on it. There was no laptop set up to stream the event. There was just a half-eaten sea bass and an air of absolute, suffocating negligence. A murmur ran through the restaurant. "Wait," a woman at the next table whispered, loud enough to be heard on the video recording that would surface later, if they are celebrating. Why did they look terrified when she came on screen? And then, the Vector arrived. The Vector was a 20-year-old college student named Mike. He was sitting 2 tables away. He was bored. He had recognized Kelsey from her local influencer work. He had seen the TV. He had connected the dots. He pulled out his phone. He did not frame the shot to be artistic. He framed it to be brutal. He held the phone vertically. In the top half of the frame, he captured the TV screen, where I was standing on stage, looking radiant and powerful. In the bottom half of the frame, he captured my family, shrinking into the leather booth, looking small and petty. He hit record. Back in D.C., I leaned toward the microphone. I took a breath. I let the silence hang for a moment. I did not know about the restaurant. I did not know about the montage. I only knew what I needed to say. "Thank you," I said. My voice was steady. It did not shake. I looked directly into the camera lens. I imagined I was looking through the glass and straight into the eyes of the people who had told me Machine Girl was an insult. "This award is not just for me," I said. "It is for every person who has ever been told that their obsession is a waste of time." In the restaurant, the camera zoomed in on my face. The restaurant was silent. My family was forced to watch. They could not look away without causing a scene. They were hostages to my success. I continued. "I want to thank the people who believed in me." I said, "My mentors at Ironvale, the users who tested the snap rail." I paused. This was the moment, the deviation from the standard script, and I said, "I want to say thank you to the people who did not believe in me." On the phone recording in St. Louis, you can see Kelsey flinch. You can see my mother reach for my father's hand. To the people who called my work a hobby, I said, to the people who thought my ambition was invisible, to the people who told me to stop dreaming and do something that makes real money. The irony was acidic. Here I was, accepting a check for $50,000, while they sat eating a dinner that cost maybe $200. "You gave me a gift," I said. "You taught me that I did not need permission to be great. You taught me that the only validation that matters is the one that comes from the work itself. And then, the captioning software on the television broadcast did something miraculous. It was a glitch, or perhaps divine intervention. As I said the words, to the people who considered my work meaningless, the closed captions lagged slightly. The screen froze on a close-up of my face. The text bar at the bottom turned yellow. To those who called it stupid, it was a paraphrase, a summarization by the live captioner. But it was the exact word Kelsey had used in her text message. Stupid. The word hung on the screen in the restaurant, glowing above their heads like a neon sign pointing out their guilt. Mike, the student with the phone, panned his camera down. He caught Kelsey staring at the word stupid on the screen. He caught the look of absolute, naked realization on her face. She wasn't just embarrassed. She was exposed. The narrative she had carefully curated, the supportive sister, the family-first influencer, was disintegrating in real time. Under the glow of high-definition hypocrisy, in the video, you can hear Mike's voice behind the camera. It is a whisper, full of disbelief. "Yo," he says, "they are not celebrating. They are hiding." On stage, I finished my speech. "So," I said, "I accept this for the girl in the garage. She was right to keep building. Thank you." I stepped back. The applause erupted again. It was a thunderclap. In the restaurant. No one clapped. The silence at the Lawson booth was absolute. My father signaled for the check, his hand waving frantically at the waiter. He wanted to leave. He wanted to run. But the waiter was watching the screen. The manager was watching the screen. The entire room was watching the screen. They had to sit there. They had to wait for the credit card machine. They had to endure the gaze of strangers who now knew the truth about the family-first Lawsons. I walked off stage, the metal heavy and warm against my skin. I handed the trophy to a handler and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 10 years. I checked my phone. It was blowing up, but not with texts from them. It was notifications from Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. The video Mike had recorded was already up. It had been online for 3 minutes. It had 10,000 views. The title was simple, brutal, and perfect. Skipped her stupid award, watched her win live above their table. I watched the view count tick up. 11,000, 12,000, 15,000. I stood in the wings of the stage, surrounded by the darkness, and watched the light of their public humiliation begin to dawn. I didn't feel happy. Happiness is too light a word. I felt balanced. The scales of the universe, which had been tipped against me for so long, had finally slammed down in my favor. I put my phone in my purse. I walked toward the after-party. I had a glass of champagne to drink. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to worry about whether anyone saved me a seat. The whole world was offering me one. The champagne in my glass was warm, but I drank it anyway. I was sitting on the edge of the bed in my hotel room at the Willard. The heavy curtains drawn back to reveal the Washington, D.C. skyline, but my attention was entirely focused on the device glowing in my lap. My phone was vibrating so constantly that it felt like a living thing, shivering in my hand. It was not a steady stream of notifications. It was an avalanche. I opened the family group chat. It had been silent for days, a digital ghost town where my messages went to die. Now, it was a war zone. My mother was the first to strike. Her message had come in 3 minutes after I walked off stage. "Hazel, why did you not tell us it was this big? You said it was an award. You did not say it was the Morrison Medal on national television. We look completely unprepared. You should have communicated better." I stared at the screen. Blinking slowly, I had sent them the link. I had sent them the time. I had told them it was the biggest honor of my career, but in the Lawson revisionist history. The fact that they ignored me was now my failure to explain myself adequately. My father's text was next. "We are trying to eat, and people are staring at us. I had to ask the waiter to bring the check early. This is humiliating. Hazel, you have turned a family dinner into a circus." Then came Kelsey. Her messages were not sentences. They were panic attacks typed out in blue bubbles. "You knew. You knew they were going to do that segment. You set us up. I look like a monster. Hazel, people are recording us. Do something. She did not ask about the medal. She did not say congratulations. She was worried about her angles. I switched apps. I went to Twitter, or X, or whatever the world was calling it that week. The trending tab was a list of topics that made my stomach turn and my heart race at the same time. Number 1, Hazel Lawson. Number 2, the Morrison Medal. Number 3, Stupid Award. The video that Mike, the college student, had recorded at the restaurant had been reposted by a major pop culture account. It had 2 million views in 40 minutes. The caption was brutal. Imagine telling your sister her award is stupid, and then having to watch her win $50,000 while you eat your appetizers. The silence at that table is loud. The comments were a landslide of internet justice. People were dissecting every frame. They pointed out my father's scowl. They analyzed my mother's frozen smile. But mostly, they went after Kelsey. And then, the internet did what the internet does best. It dug. I watched in real time as the detectives of social media began to comb through Kelsey's digital footprint. They were looking for context, and they found it. A user with the handle Archive Queen posted a clip from a live stream Kelsey had done 6 months ago. I remembered the day. I was in the background, working on a servo motor at the kitchen table while visiting home. Kelsey had been doing a Q&A with her followers. In the clip, someone asked about the noise in the background. Kelsey rolled her eyes at the camera. She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Oh, that is just my sister," she said to the lens. "She is obsessed with this, techie wheelchair stuff. It is so boring. I keep telling her to get a real job. But she is a little delusional. She thinks she's going to save the world with a screwdriver. Anyway, let's talk about my skincare routine." The clip went viral instantly. It was the smoking gun. It proved that the text message about the stupid award was not a one-time slip of the tongue. It was a pattern. It was a philosophy. The comments on Kelsey's Instagram page were refreshing at a rate that was dizzying. Delusional? She just won a national medal. Who are you? Techie wheelchair stuff? You mean accessibility? You are ableist and mean. Unfollowing. Justice for Hazel. I watched the follower count on Kelsey's profile. It was dropping. It wasn't a slow leak. It was a hemorrhage. 10,000, 9,000, 8,000. I put the phone down. I walked to the window. I felt a strange sense of detachment. I was an engineer. I understood cause and effect. If you apply pressure to a weak structure, it collapses. Kelsey had built her entire brand on being the main character, the benevolent, beautiful star of a perfect family, but the foundation was rotten. All it took was one moment of high-definition truth to bring the whole house down. I slept for 3 hours. When I woke up, the sun was rising over the Potomac, and the damage had compounded. I checked my email. There was a message from the legal department of the water bottle company Kelsey had been bragging about. They had CC'd me, presumably because my name was now the only one with value in the Lawson directory. "Ms. Lawson," it read, "due to recent events and the misalignment with our brand values regarding inclusivity and family support, we are terminating our partnership with Kelsey Lawson effective immediately." Then came the news from St. Louis. I learned the details later from a friend of a friend. But the gist of it was cinematic in its cruelty. The dinner at Copper and Vine had not just been a family gathering. That was the twist that no one saw coming. Not even me. Kelsey had invited a potential investor that night. She was pitching herself to a local media mogul, a man who owned 3 radio stations and a lifestyle magazine. She wanted a column. She wanted a show. She had sold him on the idea of the wholesome Lawson family. He was sitting at the table with them. He was the empty chair visible in Mike's video, just out of frame, when the broadcast started, when the stupid award text appeared on the screen, and when the crowd in the restaurant turned on them. The investor did not make a scene. He simply wiped his mouth with his napkin. He placed a $50 bill on the table to cover his portion of the wine, and he walked out. He left them sitting there in the wreckage of their own making. He ghosted them in person, by 9 in the morning. Kelsey had lost the water bottle deal. By 10 in the morning, the local TV station where she did freelance reporting released a statement on Facebook. We value community and kindness. The views expressed by our independent contractors do not reflect our station. We have severed ties with Kelsey Lawson. She was radioactive. I was finishing my coffee when there was a knock on my hotel room door. I was not expecting room service. I was not expecting anyone. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Kelsey. She was wearing sunglasses, big dark ones that covered half her face, but she couldn't hide the puffiness of her cheeks. She was wearing a hoodie, pulled up over her head. She looked like a celebrity trying to avoid the paparazzi, or a fugitive trying to avoid the police. I opened the door. She stood there, trembling. She looked small. For 26 years, Kelsey had loomed over me like a skyscraper, blocking my sun. Now, she looked like rubble. "Can I come in?" she asked. Her voice was cracked. I stepped aside. She walked into the room. She looked at the unmade bed. She looked at the view of the Capitol. She looked at the Morrison medal, which was sitting on the desk next to my laptop. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had been crying for hours. "I lost everything," she said. She did not say hello. She did not say congratulations. She went straight to the tragedy of her own life. "The station fired me," she said. "The brand deal is gone. My comments are so bad I had to deactivate my account. Mom and Dad are not answering the phone because they are too embarrassed to talk to anyone." She looked at me, waiting for me to fix it. That was the dynamic. She broke things. The family fixed them. She made a mess. We cleaned it up. "I am sorry," I said. "That sounds hard." My voice was flat. I was not being cruel. I was just refusing to absorb her panic. I was insulating my own emotional circuitry. "Hard?" she snapped. A flash of the old Kelsey appeared, the one who demanded the world bend to her will. "It is a disaster, Hazel. They are destroying me, and it is all because of that that award." She caught herself on the word stupid, but it was too late. The reflex was deep. "You have to help me," she said. Her tone shifted from anger to begging. "You have to post something. Tell them we were joking. Tell them it is an inside joke. Tell them I am actually really supportive." I looked at her. "But you are not," I said. "You have never been supportive. You called my work delusional. You called my award stupid. Why would I lie to the world to protect a version of you that doesn't exist?" She stared at me. She seemed genuinely confused by my refusal. In her mind, the truth was malleable. It was something you edited, like a photo filter. "Because we are family," she cried. "Family comes first. That is what Mom always says." "Family comes first when it benefits you," I said. "When I needed you to show up, you had dinner reservations." She paced the room. She walked to the window and looked out. She was cornered. She had no audience, no sponsors, no validation. She was just a girl in a hoodie in her sister's hotel room. Then, she turned around. Her face changed. She composed herself. She wiped her eyes. She put on a new mask, the business mask. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I get it. You are mad. You have the upper hand. Fine. But look, Hazel, you are famous now. Like, real famous. You are going to need help. You are an engineer. You don't know how to handle press. You don't know how to handle brand strategy." I narrowed my eyes. "Where are you going with this?" "Hire me," she said. The audacity took my breath away. It was stunning. It was a masterpiece of narcissism. "Hire you?" I repeated. "I can be your PR manager," she said, speaking faster now, pitching the idea. "I know the media. I know how to spin this. We can turn this whole sister feud thing into a redemption arc. We can do a joint interview. I will cry. I will apologize. We can launch a foundation together. Sisters for Mobility. It will be huge. I can run your socials." She was serious. She was standing there, amidst the wreckage of her career, trying to colonize mine. She wanted to take the things she had mocked, my techie wheelchair stuff, and use it as a life raft for her own drowning relevance. I looked at the Morrison medal on the desk. It was solid gold. It was heavy. It was real. Then I looked at my sister. She was light. She was flimsy. She was made of pixels and desperate need. I felt a moment of pity for her. Not the warm pity of compassion, but the cold pity of a scientist looking at a specimen that could not adapt to a changing environment. She thought she could just rewrite the script. She didn't realize that I was the director now. "Kelsey," I said. She stopped talking. She looked hopeful. "I don't need a PR manager," I said. "My work speaks for itself. That is the difference between us." Her face fell. "And," I continued, "I don't need a redemption arc. I didn't do anything wrong." "But what am I supposed to do?" she whispered. "I have no job. I have bills. I have a lease." "You can get a job," I said. "A real job, like you told me to do." She flinched. "There are plenty of places hiring in St. Louis," I said. "I hear the post office has good benefits. Or maybe you can go back to school." "You are enjoying this," she accused. "You are happy I am ruined." "I am not happy," I said honestly. "I am just busy. I have a meeting with the National Science Foundation in an hour. You have to leave." I walked to the door and held it open. She stood there for a moment, weighing her options. She could scream. She could cry. She could refuse to leave. But she saw something in my eyes that she had never seen before. She saw a wall that she couldn't climb, couldn't charm, and couldn't break. She walked past me. She smelled of stale perfume and airport air. She stopped in the hallway. "Mom is going to be furious," she said. It was her last weapon, the threat of maternal disapproval. "Tell her to email me," I said. "I will read it when I have time." I closed the door. I locked it. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. My heart was beating fast. But my hands were steady. I had done it. I had said no. I had severed the limb to save the body. I walked back to the desk. I picked up my phone. There was a new notification. It wasn't a text from my family. It was an email from the lawyer I had contacted earlier that morning, the one I had hired to look into the strange Hazel Lawson mobility trademark request I had received before the ceremony. I opened the attachment. It was a copy of the filing documents for the LLC. I scanned the page. I saw the applicant's name. It wasn't Hazel Lawson. I scrolled down to the signature line. It was a digital signature, time-stamped 3 days ago. It read, "Authorized Representative, Kelsey Lawson." And below that, in the section for business address, was my parents' house in St. Louis. I stared at the screen. The pity I had felt moments ago evaporated. The coldness returned, sharper than before. She hadn't just come here to beg for a job. She had come here to see if I knew. She had come here to see if she could get me to hire her into a company that she had secretly tried to steal before it even existed. The dinner hadn't just been a pitch to an investor. It had been a victory lap. They thought they had the rights to my name. They thought they had the rights to my future. I picked up the Morrison medal. I ran my thumb over the raised lettering. They wanted a fight? Okay. I was an engineer. I knew how to dismantle things, and I was about to take their little scheme apart, bolt by bolt. I found her in the lobby of the Willard Hotel, sitting in a high-backed velvet armchair that looked like a throne she had been exiled from. She was not leaving. She was waiting. It was a classic Kelsey maneuver. Linger in the orbit of the person you need, waiting for gravity to pull them back to you. She had ordered a coffee, but the cup sat untouched on the marble table. A small island of cold ceramic in a sea of disaster. I had the laptop tucked under my arm. It felt heavy, not because of the hardware, but because of the evidence burning a hole through the hard drive. I walked across the Persian rug, the sound of my heels muffled by the thick wool. I did not announce my arrival. I simply pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. Kelsey looked up. Her face was a map of calculated distress. The sunglasses were back on, perched on top of her head, pulling her blonde hair back from a forehead that was tight with tension. When she saw me, Her expression shifted instantly. The despair softened into something that looked like hope, or perhaps just opportunity. "You came back," she said. Her voice was husky, pitched low to sound intimate and conspiratorial. "I knew you would not just leave me like that." I did not smile. I placed the laptop on the table, closed. I folded my hands on top of it. "I am not here to hire you." "Kelsey," I said. She waved her hand, dismissing my previous refusal as a temper tantrum. I know, she said. "I pushed too hard upstairs. I am sorry. I am spiraling. Hazel, you have to understand. My entire life just evaporated in 12 hours. She leaned forward, dropping her voice to a whisper, creating a bubble of us against the world in the middle of the busy lobby. "Look," she said, "I have been thinking. You do not have to hire me. You do not even have to like me right now. But we need to stop the bleeding. The internet is eating us alive. If you just post one thing, one simple photo of us together, maybe a caption saying that the media is blowing things out of proportion, or that we have a sarcastic sense of humor, it would stop. It would save me." She looked at me with those wide, blue eyes that had gotten her out of speeding tickets and missed deadlines her entire life. "Please, Hazel," she said. "For the family." I looked at her, really looked at her. For years. I had seen her as a giant, a force of nature that I had to navigate around. Now, I saw her for what she was. A parasite. A beautiful, charming, well-dressed parasite that was terrified because the host had finally developed an immune system. "I am not going to do that," I said. "Why not?" she hissed, the mask slipping slightly. "It costs you nothing. It costs me my integrity." I said, "It costs me the truth, and I did not build my life. I did not work 18-hour days in a lab. I did not bleed over blueprints, just to serve as a backup plan for your failed vanity projects." Kelsey recoiled, as if I had slapped her. She sat back, crossing her arms over her chest. A defensive posture I knew well. She pivoted to the next weapon in her arsenal. Guilt. It was a weapon my mother had sharpened for her. "You are so cold," she said, shaking her head. "You have always been cold. Do you know what this is doing to Mom and Dad? Dad is afraid to go to the golf club. Mom has been crying all morning. She has high blood pressure. Hazel, do you want to be the reason she ends up in the hospital? Because you are too stubborn to post a picture?" It was a masterful performance. She was leveraging my parents' health, their reputation, and my own dormant daughter guilt all in 3 sentences, a week ago. It might have worked. A week ago, I might have crumbled, apologized, and fixed it for them. But a week ago, I hadn't seen the email. I opened the laptop. The screen came to life, glowing bright in the dim lobby light. I turned the computer around so it faced her. The document was open. It was the PDF of the LLC filing for Hazel Lawson Mobility. "Let's talk about Mom and Dad," I said, "and let's talk about you." Kelsey looked at the screen. She squinted, trying to read the fine print. I saw the moment the recognition hit her. It wasn't a slow dawn. It was a sudden, violent impact. Her face went pale, draining of color so fast it looked like the blood had been siphoned out of her. She stopped breathing for a second. I watched her eyes dart across the page. She saw the date, she saw the company name, and she saw the signature. "Who registered this?" I asked. My voice was calm, deadly quiet. Who registered a company using my name, my intellectual property, and my identity? 3 days before I received the award? Kelsey swallowed. I could see the muscles in her throat working. She looked away from the screen, then back at me. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry, choking sound. "Oh, that," she said. She waved her hand nervously. That is nothing. You are thinking too negatively. Hazel, you always assume the worst." I waited. I did not interrupt. I let the silence stretch until it was thin and screaming. It was a surprise, she said, grasping for a narrative. We were going to surprise you. We knew you were winning the award. Well, we knew you were winning something, and we wanted to make sure you were set up. You know, business-wise. You are an engineer. You don't know about trademarks and LLCs. We were just handling the boring paperwork for you. It was a gift. A gift. I repeated. Yes, she said, gaining a little confidence now that she had found a lie. We were going to hand it over to you at dinner. That is why we wanted you to come to St. Louis so bad. It was a big reveal. Here is your company, Hazel. It was a lie so bold, so insulting to my intelligence, that I almost admired the sheer architecture of it. I looked at the timestamp on the document. The filing was submitted on Tuesday. I said, the same day I told you about the award. You didn't do this to help me. You did this to own me. I picked up my phone. I placed it on the table next to the laptop. I am going to call my lawyer. I said. Kelsey's eyes widened. Lawyer? You have a lawyer? I have an intellectual property attorney. I said, his name is Mr. Sterling, and we are going to ask him to look up the details of this filing right now. I dialed. I put it on speaker. The phone rang once, twice. Hazel? Mr. Sterling's voice was crisp and professional. Hi, Robert, I said, keeping my eyes locked on Kelsey. I am sitting here with my sister. We are looking at the filing for Hazel Lawson Mobility. I need you to confirm something for me. Can you pull up the applicant information? One moment, he said. I could hear the clicking of a keyboard in the background. Kelsey was frozen. She looked like she wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't work. Okay, I have it. Mr. Sterling said, the applicant is listed as Kelsey Lawson. The registered agent address is a residential address in St. Louis. The operating agreement lists the managing member as, let me see here, Kelsey Lawson, with a 49% stake held by a Linda Lawson. Linda Lawson. My mother. And what is my stake? I asked. Mr. Sterling paused. There is no listing for a Hazel Lawson in the initial operating agreement. It appears to be a holding company intended to license the name. The silence in the lobby was absolute. The clinking of spoons and the murmur of tourists faded into white noise. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears and the shallow, terrified breathing of my sister. Thank you, Robert, I said. That is all I needed. I hung up. I looked at Kelsey. She was not looking at me. She was staring at her hands, which were clenched in her lap. The surprise gift narrative had disintegrated. The helper mask had fallen off. What was left was the naked greed. They didn't just want me to come to dinner. I said, my voice was shaking slightly, not from sadness, but from rage. They wanted me to come to dinner so you could slide a piece of paper across the table and have me sign away the rights to my own name before I knew what it was worth. Kelsey looked up. Her eyes were wet. But it wasn't performative this time. It was fear. We were scared, she whispered. Scared of what? I asked. Scared that you would leave, she said. It was the first honest thing she had said in 20 years. We knew you were working on something big, she said. The words tumbling out now. Dad heard you on the phone with that doctor a month ago. You sounded different. You sounded important. And then the award came. And we knew. We knew that once you got on that stage, once people saw what you could do, you wouldn't need us anymore. You would leave Tulsa and St. Louis behind. You would be the famous one, and we would just be the family back home. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. We just wanted to keep it in the family, she said. If we owned the brand, you would have to stay connected to us. You would have to talk to us. We could build something together. Mom said it was for your own good. She said you are not social, that you would get eaten alive by sharks in the business world. We were trying to protect you, protect me. I said, by stealing from me. I realized then the full scope of the ambush. The dinner at Copper and Vine wasn't just a celebration for Kelsey. It was a board meeting, the investor, the empty chair at the table. He wasn't there for Kelsey's blog. He was there because Kelsey had promised him a piece of the Hazel Lawson pie. They were going to leverage my innovation, my name, and my work to fund their lifestyle, and they were going to call it family business. If I had gone to that dinner, if I had missed the ceremony, they would have cornered me, they would have guilted me, they would have put a contract in front of me and said, "Sign this, honey. It is just to protect the family." And I, being the well-trained, obedient daughter, might have signed it. The award didn't just give me a medal, it saved my life. I closed the laptop. The snap of the lid was loud. Kelsey flinched. "I want you to listen to me very carefully." I said. She nodded. "Mute. You are going to withdraw that filing." I said. "You are going to sign over any and all claims to the name Hazel Lawson, the name Snaprail, and anything else you and Mom tried to grab. You are going to do it by noon tomorrow." "I can't," she whispered. "The lawyer fees. We spent $3,000 setting it up. I don't have the money to undo it. That is a number." I said cold and hard, $3,000. That is what you invested in my theft. Figure it out. Sell your handbags. Sell the water bottles. I don't care. I stood up. I picked up the laptop. I looked down at her. She looked so small in that velvet chair. The giant who had ruled my childhood was gone. And Kelsey. I said. She looked up. "Do not ask me for a job again. Do not ask me for a post. Do not ask me to save you." "But what am I going to do?" she wailed, her voice rising, drawing looks from the concierge desk. "I am drowning. Hazel!" I looked at her. I thought about the years I spent drowning in her shadow, gasping for air while she stood on my shoulders to reach the sun. I thought about the garage. I thought about the silence at the dinner table. "Then you better kick," I said. I turned around. "You can swim." "Kelsey," I said over my shoulder. "But I will not be your float anymore." I walked away. I walked toward the elevators, listening to the sound of my own footsteps. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was behind me. A past that was shrinking, smaller and smaller, until it was just a speck of dust in the lobby of a hotel where I was staying in a room with a view. I got into the elevator and pressed the button for the 12th floor. As the doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the lobby, I pulled out my phone. I sent a text to Mr. Sterling. "She admitted it," I typed. "Prepare the cease and desist, and get ready for a fight. They aren't going to let go easily." The elevator rose. My ears popped. I was going up. They were staying down. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the altitude. I found her in the lobby of the Willard Hotel, sitting in a high-backed velvet armchair that looked like a throne she had been exiled from. She was not leaving. She was waiting. It was a classic Kelsey maneuver. Linger in the orbit of the person you need, waiting for gravity to pull them back to you. She had ordered a coffee, but the cup sat untouched on the marble table, a small island of cold ceramic in a sea of disaster. I had the laptop tucked under my arm. It felt heavy, not because of the hardware, but because of the evidence burning a hole through the hard drive. I walked across the Persian rug, the sound of my heels muffled by the thick wool. I did not announce my arrival. I simply pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. Kelsey looked up. Her face was a map of calculated distress. The sunglasses were back on, perched on top of her head, pulling her blonde hair back from a forehead that was tight with tension. When she saw me, her expression shifted instantly. The despair softened into something that looked like hope, or perhaps just opportunity. "You came back," she said. Her voice was husky, pitched low to sound intimate and conspiratorial. "I knew you would not just leave me like that." I did not smile. I placed the laptop on the table, closed. I folded my hands on top of it. "I am not here to hire you." "Kelsey," I said. She waved her hand, dismissing my previous refusal as a temper tantrum. I know, she said. "I pushed too hard upstairs. I am sorry. I am spiraling. Hazel, you have to understand. My entire life just evaporated in 12 hours. She leaned forward, dropping her voice to a whisper, creating a bubble of us against the world in the middle of the busy lobby. "Look," she said. I have been thinking. You do not have to hire me. You do not even have to like me right now. But we need to stop the bleeding. The internet is eating us alive. If you just post one thing, one simple photo of us together, maybe a caption saying that the media is blowing things out of proportion, or that we have a sarcastic sense of humor, it would stop. It would save me. She looked at me with those wide, blue eyes that had gotten her out of speeding tickets and missed deadlines her entire life. I looked at her, really looked at her. For years, I had seen her as a giant, a force of nature that I had to navigate around. Now, I saw her for what she was, a parasite, a beautiful, charming, well-dressed parasite that was terrified because the host had finally developed an immune system. I am not going to do that, I said. Why not? She hissed, the mask slipping slightly. It costs you nothing. It costs me my integrity. I said, it costs me the truth. And I did not build my life. I did not work 18-hour days in a lab. I did not bleed over blueprints, just to serve as a backup plan for your failed vanity projects. Kelsey recoiled, as if I had slapped her. She sat back, crossing her arms over her chest, a defensive posture I knew well. She pivoted to the next weapon in her arsenal. Guilt. It was a weapon my mother had sharpened for her. You are so cold, she said, shaking her head. You have always been cold. Do you know what this is doing to Mom and Dad? Dad is afraid to go to the golf club. Mom has been crying all morning. She has high blood pressure. Hazel, do you want to be the reason she ends up in the hospital? Because you are too stubborn to post a picture? It was a masterful performance. She was leveraging my parents' health, their reputation, and my own dormant daughter guilt all in 3 sentences. A week ago, it might have worked. A week ago, I might have crumbled, apologized, and fixed it for them. But a week ago, I hadn't seen the email. I opened the laptop. The screen came to life, glowing bright in the dim lobby light. I turned the computer around so it faced her. The document was open. It was the PDF of the LLC filing for Hazel Lawson Mobility. Let's talk about Mom and Dad, I said, and let's talk about you. Kelsey looked at the screen. She squinted, trying to read the fine print. I saw the moment the recognition hit her. It wasn't a slow dawn. It was a sudden, violent impact. Her face went pale, draining of color so fast it looked like the blood had been siphoned out of her. She stopped breathing for a second. I watched her eyes dart across the page. She saw the date, she saw the company name, and she saw the signature. Who registered this? I asked. My voice was calm, deadly quiet. Who registered a company using my name, my intellectual property, and my identity? 3 days before I received the award? Kelsey swallowed. I could see the muscles in her throat working. She looked away from the screen, then back at me. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry, choking sound. Oh, that, she said. She waved her hand nervously. That is nothing. You are thinking too negatively. Hazel, you always assume the worst. I waited. I did not interrupt. I let the silence stretch until it was thin and screaming. It was a surprise. She said, grasping for a narrative, we were going to surprise you. We knew you were winning the award. Well, we knew you were winning something, and we wanted to make sure you were set up. You know? Business-wise, you are an engineer. You don't know about trademarks and LLCs. We were just handling the boring paperwork for you. It was a gift. A gift. I repeated. Yes, she said, gaining a little confidence now that she had found a lie. We were going to hand it over to you at dinner. That is why we wanted you to come to St. Louis so bad. It was a big reveal. Here is your company, Hazel. It was a lie so bold, so insulting to my intelligence, that I almost admired the sheer architecture of it. I looked at the timestamp on the document. The filing was submitted on Tuesday. I said, the same day I told you about the award. You didn't do this to help me. You did this to own me. I picked up my phone. I placed it on the table next to the laptop. I am going to call my lawyer. I said. Kelsey's eyes widened. Lawyer? You have a lawyer? I have an intellectual property attorney. I said, his name is Mr. Sterling, and we are going to ask him to look up the details of this filing right now. I dialed. I put it on speaker. The phone rang once, twice. Hazel? Mr. Sterling's voice was crisp and professional. Hi? Robert? I said, keeping my eyes locked on Kelsey. I am sitting here with my sister. We are looking at the filing for Hazel Lawson Mobility. I need you to confirm something for me. Can you pull up the applicant information? One moment, he said. I could hear the clicking of a keyboard in the background. Kelsey was frozen. She looked like she wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't work. Okay, I have it. Mr. Sterling said, the applicant is listed as Kelsey Lawson. The registered agent address is a residential address in St. Louis. The operating agreement lists the managing member as, let me see here, Kelsey Lawson, with a 49% stake held by a Linda Lawson. Linda Lawson, my mother. And what is my stake? I asked. Mr. Sterling paused. There is no listing for a Hazel Lawson in the initial operating agreement. It appears to be a holding company intended to license the name. The silence in the lobby was absolute. The clinking of spoons and the murmur of tourists faded into white noise. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears and the shallow, terrified breathing of my sister. Thank you, Robert, I said. That is all I needed. I hung up. I looked at Kelsey. She was not looking at me. She was staring at her hands, which were clenched in her lap. The surprise gift narrative had disintegrated. The helper mask had fallen off. What was left was the naked greed. They didn't just want me to come to dinner, I said. My voice was shaking slightly, not from sadness, but from rage. They wanted me to come to dinner so you could slide a piece of paper across the table and have me sign away the rights to my own name before I knew what it was worth. Kelsey looked up. Her eyes were wet, but it wasn't performative this time. It was fear. We were scared. She whispered. Scared of what? I asked. Scared that you would leave, she said. It was the first honest thing she had said in 20 years. We knew you were working on something big, she said, the words tumbling out now. Dad heard you on the phone with that doctor a month ago. You sounded different. You sounded important. And then the award came. And we knew. We knew that once you got on that stage, once people saw what you could do, you wouldn't need us anymore. You would leave Tulsa and St. Louis behind. You would be the famous one, and we would just be the family back home. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. We just wanted to keep it in the family, she said. If we owned the brand, you would have to stay connected to us. You would have to talk to us. We could build something together. Mom said it was for your own good. She said you are not social, that you would get eaten alive by sharks in the business world. We were trying to protect you. Protect me. I said, by stealing from me. I realized then the full scope of the ambush. The dinner at Copper and Vine wasn't just a celebration for Kelsey. It was a board meeting, the investor, the empty chair at the table. He wasn't there for Kelsey's blog. He was there because Kelsey had promised him a piece of the Hazel Lawson pie. They were going to leverage my innovation, my name, and my work to fund their lifestyle. And they were going to call it family business. If I had gone to that dinner, if I had missed the ceremony, they would have cornered me. They would have guilted me. They would have put a contract in front of me and said, sign this, honey. It is just to protect the family. And I, being the well-trained, obedient daughter, might have signed it. The award didn't just give me a medal. It saved my life. I closed the laptop. The snap of the lid was loud. Kelsey flinched. I want you to listen to me very carefully, I said. She nodded. Mute. You are going to withdraw that filing, I said. You are going to sign over any and all claims to the name Hazel Lawson, the name Snaprail, and anything else you and Mom tried to grab. You are going to do it by noon tomorrow. I can't, she whispered. The lawyer fees. We spent $3,000 setting it up. I don't have the money to undo it. That is a number, I said cold and hard. $3,000. That is what you invested in my theft. Figure it out. Sell your handbags. Sell the water bottles? I don't care. I stood up. I picked up the laptop. I looked down at her. She looked so small in that velvet chair. The giant who had ruled my childhood was gone. And Kelsey. I said. She looked up. Do not ask me for a job again. Do not ask me for a post. Do not ask me to save you. But what am I going to do? She wailed, her voice rising, drawing looks from the concierge desk. I am drowning. Hazel. I looked at her. I thought about the years I spent drowning in her shadow, gasping for air while she stood on my shoulders to reach the sun. I thought about the garage. I thought about the silence at the dinner table. Then you better kick, I said. I turned around. You can swim. Kelsey, I said over my shoulder, but I will not be your float anymore. I walked away. I walked toward the elevators, listening to the sound of my own footsteps. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was behind me. A past that was shrinking, smaller and smaller, until it was just a speck of dust in the lobby of a hotel where I was staying in a room with a view. I got into the elevator and pressed the button for the 12th floor. As the doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the lobby, I pulled out my phone. I sent a text to Mr. Sterling. She admitted it, I typed. Prepare the cease and desist, and get ready for a fight. They aren't going to let go easily. The elevator rose. My ears popped. I was going up. They were staying down. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the altitude. The weeks following the Morrison Medal ceremony were a blur of velocity. If my life before the award was a slow, uphill climb in low gear, my life after it was a high-speed merge onto the freeway. The silence I had cultivated in my Baltimore apartment was replaced by the constant ringing of telephones and the ping of incoming offers. Iron Vale Mobility Labs, once a quiet bunker of research, became a pilgrimage site for investors. We had venture capitalists from Silicon Valley flying in, wearing vests and talking about scaling. We had hospital administrators from Europe calling to ask about licensing. I was invited to speak at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I was asked to keynote a conference on adaptive design in Zurich, but I did not let the noise distract me from the mechanics. I was an engineer, not a celebrity. I knew that hype was just potential energy. It meant nothing until you converted it into kinetic work. I sat down with Dr. Beck and we mapped out the future. We did not sell out. We did not license the SnapRail to the highest bidder who would mark up the price by 300%. Instead, we launched the SnapRail Access Grant. The premise was simple. We used the grant money from the Morrison Award, combined with matched funding from Iron Vale, to subsidize the cost of the units for small, rural clinics and low-income families. I wanted the device in the hands of the people who needed it, not just the people who could afford it. I hired a small team. I rented a modest office space down the hall from the main lab. It had concrete floors and exposed ductwork. I bought secondhand desks. I told my new hires, 3 brilliant, hungry junior engineers, that we were not a tech startup. We were a problem-solving unit. We kept it real. We kept it grounded. But as my professional world expanded, my personal world began to shrink in strange, uncomfortable ways. My father, the man who had only ever communicated with me in grunts and demands for silence, discovered the text message function on his phone. It started with a picture, a blurry photo of an old lawnmower engine he had taken apart on the patio table. Fix the carburetor, the caption read, followed by a wrench emoji. Then, 2 days later, saw this article about torque converters. Made me think of you. He was trying to speak my language. He was trying to pivot. He was realizing that the machine girl was now the successful CEO, and he wanted to retrofit his relationship with me. He acted as if the years of dismissal had never happened, as if we were just two gearheads who loved tinkering. It was pathetic, and it was transparent. But I replied with polite, single-sentence acknowledgments. Nice work on the engine, I typed. My mother took a different approach. She did not try to bond. She tried to network. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. I had hired an assistant, a sharp young woman named Sarah, to filter my calls. Hazel, my mother's voice said on the recording. It is Mom. Listen, Mrs. Higgins from the Garden Club. Her son is graduating with a marketing degree. He is very bright. I told her you would be happy to have a Zoom call with him to give him some industry advice. I promised her, Hazel, please do not make me look bad. She was still doing it. She was still trading favors using my time as the currency. She was still promising pieces of me to strangers to buy social capital for herself in St. Louis. I had Sarah email Mrs. Higgins with a polite template declination, citing my travel schedule. I did not open the door. I did not let the drama seep into the clean, sterile environment I had built. But the Lawson family was not done with me. They were not just annoying relatives trying to ride coattails. They were active saboteurs. The realization arrived in the form of a legal courier packet from Mr. Sterling, my attorney. I was in my office, reviewing the specs for a new titanium alloy. When Sterling called, Hazel, he said, we have a problem with the trademark filing, and it is uglier than we thought. Did Kelsey not withdraw it? I asked, putting down my pen. She didn't, Sterling said, but that is not the main issue. We dug into the filing history. We found the original application for the LLC, Hazel. The person who signed as the organizer didn't just use your parents' address. They used a power of attorney clause. What? I asked. The document claims that the filer had verbal authorization to act on your behalf as a family representative. Sterling explained, but here is the kicker. We found a vendor email. A vendor? Yes, Sterling said. It seems the Hazel Lawson Mobility, LLC, tried to place an order with a label printing company in Ohio 3 weeks ago. They wanted 5,000 adhesive labels printed with your name and a logo that looks suspiciously like a rip-off of the Iron Veil design. My stomach turned. I never ordered labels. I know, Sterling said. The email came from an address, management@hazellawsonmobility.com. We traced the IP address. I closed my eyes. St. Louis. St. Louis, Sterling confirmed. But specifically, a coffee shop 2 blocks from your parents' house, and the contact person listed on the invoice wasn't Kelsey. Who was it? It was a man named Greg Miller. Sterling said. I don't know a Greg Miller, I said. We looked him up, Sterling said. He is a brand broker. He specializes in licensing deals for influencers and reality TV stars. He sells names to manufacturing companies in China to stamp on cheap goods. The room went cold. The air conditioning hummed, but the chill was internal. They weren't just securing the name, I said, my voice quiet. They were selling it. They were preparing to flood the market, Sterling said. Cheap wheelchairs, walkers, canes, all stamped with Hazel Lawson. They were going to turn your reputation for high-quality engineering into a cash grab for plastic junk before you even got off the stage in D.C. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time. I looked at the whiteboard where my team had sketched out the plans for the SnapRail Access Grant. We were trying to help people. My family was trying to liquidate me. I did not scream. I did not throw things. I did what I always did. I gathered data. I spent the next 6 hours going through every digital scrap I could find. I accessed the public records. I requested the full metadata from the trademark office. And then I found the smoking gun. It was in the email chain that Sterling had forwarded to me. The trademark office had sent an automated confirmation email when the application was first received. It was sent to the primary email address listed on the form. The address was kelsey.lawson@gmail.com. But there was a forwarding rule. The email had been automatically forwarded to my mother's account, and then, crucially, there was a reply from my mother's account to the broker, Greg Miller. Everything is filed, my mother had written. We will have her signature by the weekend. She is coming to dinner on the night of the award. We will get it done then. I stared at the screen, the dinner, the family first dinner, the dinner where they had booked a table at Copper and Vine. It wasn't a celebration. It was a closing. They had planned to ambush me. They knew I would be high on the adrenaline of the award, or at least. The award they thought was just a small plaque. They were going to sit me down, give me wine, tell me they were proud of me, and then slide a document across the table. Just some paperwork to protect your name. Honey, Dad and I handled it for you, and I would have signed it, because I wanted them to love me, because I wanted to trust them. The timeline clicked into place like the gears of a clock. The date of the email was 3 days before the ceremony. The date of the meeting with Greg Miller was the same night as the ceremony. Greg Miller was the investor Kelsey had invited. He was the empty chair. He wasn't there to give Kelsey a column. He was there to inspect the merchandise, and the merchandise was me. I picked up my phone. It was 8 o'clock at night. I dialed my parents' home number. My mother answered on the second ring. Her voice was cautious. "Hazel," she said. "Put Dad on the line," I said. "And put Kelsey on too if she's there." "Hazel, honey, we are just watching TV. Put them on," I said. My voice was not loud. It was absolute. There was a fumbling sound, then a click. The speakerphone was on. "We are here," my father said. His voice was gruff, defensive. "I know about Greg Miller," I said. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a car. "I know about the label printer in Ohio," I continued. "I know about the LLC filing. I know that you were planning to have me sign over my rights at the dinner." "Hazel, wait," my mother started, her voice trembling. "You are misunderstanding. I am understanding perfectly," I said. "You were selling me. You were selling my name to put on cheap plastic trash so you could make a licensing fee. We were securing your future," my mother cried. It was the same wail she used when she defended Kelsey. "You don't know business. Hazel, you are a scientist. You would have given it away for free. We were trying to make sure the family got something out of all your hard work. We sacrificed so much for you." "Sacrificed?" I asked. "You sacrificed me. You ignored me for 20 years. And the moment I became valuable, you tried to harvest me like a crop." "You are being selfish," my father cut in. "We are your parents. That name, Lawson, it is my name. I gave it to you. It belongs to this family. It belongs to the person who built the reputation attached to it," I said. "And that person is me. It is our name too." Kelsey's voice shrilled from the background. She must have been sitting right there. "I have a right to use it. I need this. Hazel, I have nothing left." "You have nothing left because you built your life on smoke," I said. "And I will not let you burn my house down to keep yours warm." "We did it for you," my mother sobbed. "You will thank us later. Greg Miller said we could make $200,000 in the first year. We could pay off the mortgage. We could help Kelsey. It is for the family." "The family," I repeated. I looked at the empty office around me. I looked at the prototypes on the shelves. This was my family. The work was my family. "Here is what is going to happen," I said. "Mr. Sterling is filing a formal opposition to the trademark tomorrow. We are also filing a complaint with the Fraud Division regarding the unauthorized use of my identity to solicit vendors." "You wouldn't," my father said. "You wouldn't sue your own parents." "I am not suing parents," I said. "I am suing business partners who tried to defraud me. You chose to make this a business transaction, so I am treating it like one." "Hazel, please," my mother wept. "Don't do this. People are already laughing at us. If you take us to court, it will destroy us." "You destroyed yourselves," I said. "I am just turning on the lights." I hung up. I sat there, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. It was done. The bridge wasn't just burned. I had dynamited the foundation. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Kelsey. I stared at it. The audacity was breathtaking. "Hazel," the text read, "think about this. If you drag Mom and Dad into court, you will look like the bad guy, the ungrateful daughter. But I can fix it. If you sign over the rights to the name, just for lifestyle products. You keep the medical stuff. I will post a video. I will take all the blame. I will say I was jealous and I lied. I will restore your image. I will make you look like a saint. Deal?" She was trying to blackmail me with her own confession. She was offering to sell me the truth in exchange for my soul. I read the text again. If you sign over the rights, I will take the blame. She had put it in writing. She had explicitly linked the rights to the admission of guilt. It was coercion. It was extortion. I did not reply. I took a screenshot. I saved it to the cloud. I saved it to my hard drive. I emailed it to Mr. Sterling. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. Kelsey thought she was playing poker. She thought she had a royal flush because she held the card of public perception. She thought I was afraid of looking like the bad daughter. She didn't realize that I wasn't playing cards. I was playing chess, and she had just handed me the queen. I packed up my bag. I turned off the lights in the office. The hearing was set for next week. They would bring their tears. They would bring their stories of sacrifice. They would bring the family-first defense. I would bring the receipts. I walked out into the night air of Baltimore. It was crisp and cold. I took a deep breath. I was alone. Yes, but for the first time in my life. I wasn't waiting for anyone to pick me up. I had my own set of keys. The conference room in the legal center in downtown St. Louis was sterile. It smelled of lemon polish and aggressive air conditioning. There was a long mahogany table in the center, dividing the room like a canyon. On one side sat Mr. Sterling and me. On the other side sat my parents, Kelsey, and a lawyer they had frantically retained, a man who looked like he had not slept in 3 days. At the head of the table sat the mediator, a retired judge with a face carved out of granite. This was not a trial. It was a mediation hearing regarding the disputed ownership of the trademark Hazel Lawson Mobility and the associated limited liability company. But to me, it felt like an autopsy. We were dissecting the corpse of my childhood to see what had killed it. My family arrived 10 minutes late. They made an entrance. My mother was wearing a pastel cardigan, the kind she wore to church to signal that she was a good, wholesome woman. My father was in a suit that was slightly too tight, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and indignation. Kelsey was wearing black, looking somber, like a widow at a funeral she had caused. They did not look at me. They looked at the mediator. They looked at the water pitcher. They looked everywhere except at the daughter they had tried to sell. The mediator cleared his throat. "We are here to resolve the dispute regarding the intellectual property rights," he said. "Mr. Sterling, you may begin." Mr. Sterling opened his file. He was calm, surgical, and terrifyingly efficient. He laid out the timeline. He showed the date of the filing. He showed the date of the award notification. He established, without emotion, that the filing was made without my consent. Then, the opposing lawyer spoke. "Your Honor," he said, using a title that wasn't technically necessary but sounded good, "the family contends that this was not a malicious act. It was a gift. The parents, acting in the best interest of their daughter, secured the business structure to ensure she was protected. They intended to transfer the rights to her. This is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by," he glanced at me, "by a breakdown in family communication." My mother sniffed loudly. She pulled a tissue from her purse and dabbed at dry eyes. "We just wanted to help," she said, her voice trembling. "We love Hazel. We are a close family. We do everything together. It was a performance. It was the same performance she had given my entire life. The martyr, the benevolent mother." The mediator looked at me. "Ms. Lawson, do you have a response?" I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my spine was steel. I looked at them. I looked at the people who had raised me, and I felt nothing but a profound, exhausting clarity. "This was not a gift," I said. My voice was steady. "A gift is something you give to someone. A theft is something you take from them." My father slammed his hand on the table. "How dare you call us thieves?" he shouted. "We fed you. We clothed you. That name, Lawson, is my name." Mr. Sterling touched my arm, signaling me to pause, but I kept going. "I'm not talking about the name Lawson," I said. "I am talking about the name Hazel Lawson. That name represents 8 years of university and research. It represents thousands of hours in a lab while you were on vacation. It represents the snap rail. It represents the work. You did not build that. You did not fund that. And you do not get to sell it. My mother looked at the mediator, pleading. She is confused. My mother said, she is under a lot of stress from the fame. We were celebrating her that night. We had a dinner. I nodded. Let us talk about that dinner. I said. I opened my laptop. I connected it to the projector system in the center of the table. Mr. Sterling had advised against this. He said it was emotional, not legal, but I needed them to see it. I needed the mediator to see the truth behind the loving family defense. I played the video. It was the clip Mike had recorded. The quality was sharp. The sound was clear. On the screen, the caption, "Stupid Award," glowed in neon yellow. In the quiet conference room, the silence of the Lawson family on the video was deafening. We watched my father chew his food while my name was announced. We watched my mother look terrified, not happy. We watched Kelsey look at the screen with pure, unadulterated jealousy. I paused the video on the frame where Kelsey realized she was being filmed. Does this look like a celebration? I asked. The room was silent. My mother was pale. My father was staring at his hands. But I wasn't done. The defense claims, I continued, that the trademark filing was a surprise gift. They claimed they were going to hand it over to me. I reached into my folder. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a printout of the text message Kelsey had sent me the night before. I slid it across the mahogany table. It stopped right in front of the mediator. If it was a gift, I said, then why did my sister try to sell it back to me yesterday? The mediator picked up the paper. He adjusted his glasses. He read it out loud. If you sign over the rights for lifestyle products, I will post a video taking the blame. I will restore your image. The opposing lawyer closed his eyes. He knew it was over. You cannot argue that a trademark was a gift when you have written evidence of extortion. Kelsey made a sound. It was a small, strangled gasp. She looked at me, and her eyes were wide with shock. She hadn't thought I would use it. She thought the sister code still applied. She thought I would protect her from her own stupidity. Mr. Sterling took over. We have the IP logs, he said. We have the email to the label printer in Ohio, authorized by a Greg Miller, ordering merchandise before Hazel Lawson even accepted the award. We have the digital signature on the LLC filing, which was forged. This is fraud. This is identity theft. And now, we have proof of blackmail. He looked at the opposing lawyer. We are prepared to file criminal charges, Sterling said, unless you sign the agreement. The agreement was simple. The trademark for Hazel Lawson Mobility would be transferred to me immediately. The LLC would be dissolved, and the Lawson family, specifically Linda, Robert, and Kelsey Lawson, would sign a permanent non-compete. They were forbidden from using my name, my likeness, or my professional reputation for any commercial purpose. They were forbidden from representing themselves as my agents. The opposing lawyer leaned over and whispered to my parents. My father turned red. My mother started to cry for real this time. But we are her parents, she wailed. You cannot ban us from our own daughter. I am not banning you from being my parents. I said, I am banning you from being my business partners. They argued for 10 minutes. They tried to bargain. They tried to keep a 5% stake. They tried to keep the right to sell merchandise. Mr. Sterling simply pointed to the printout of the text message. Finally, the fight went out of them. My father took the pen. He signed the document with aggressive, angry strokes. My mother signed it, her tears spotting the paper. Then it was Kelsey's turn. She took the pen. Her hand was shaking. She looked at me one last time. Hazel, she whispered, please, I can't. I don't have anything else. I looked at her. I saw the sister who had laughed at my wind turbine. I saw the sister who had called me delusional. I saw the sister who had tried to trade my reputation for her redemption. Sign it, I said. She signed. The mediator notarized the documents. He stamped them with a heavy, final thud. It is done, he said. The rights are transferred. We stood up. My mother rushed around the table. She tried to grab my hands. Hazel, she sobbed. Please don't go like this. Don't make us strangers. We are family. You are tearing this family apart over money. I pulled my hands away. I stepped back. I am not tearing the family apart. I said, I'm just putting it back in its correct shape. I looked at my father, who wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Kelsey, who was staring at the wall, realizing that she was no longer the protagonist of the show. You keep saying family first, I said, but you never meant it. You meant Kelsey first. You meant image first. I picked up my laptop. I checked my phone. I had a flight to catch. I had a lab to get back to. Family, I said, my voice ringing in the sterile room, is not a place where people eat dinner under a TV and call their child's dreams stupid. I turned my back on them. Hazel, my mother called out. I kept walking. I walked out of the conference room. I walked down the long hallway. Kelsey did not follow me. My parents did not follow me. They stayed in the room, trapped in the silence they had created, left with nothing but each other and the truth I had forced them to swallow. I walked out of the building and into the sunlight of St. Louis. It was bright. The air was clear. I felt lighter. The invisible weight I had been carrying since I was 8 years old, the weight of trying to be good enough, the weight of trying to be seen, the weight of being the backup plan, was gone. I took a taxi to the airport. I flew back to Baltimore. That night, I went to the lab. It was midnight. The building was dark. I unlocked the door and flipped the switch. The fluorescent lights flickered on, humming with that familiar, comforting sound. I walked to my workbench. My tools were exactly where I had left them. The prototype for the next generation of the snap rail was sitting on the stand. It was waiting for me. I put on my shop apron. I tied the strings behind my back. I picked up a wrench. I wasn't Hazel Lawson, the victim. I wasn't Hazel Lawson, the viral sensation. I wasn't even Hazel Lawson, the Morrison medalist. I was just the machine girl, and I had work to do. I tightened the bolt. I checked the tension. I smiled. The world outside could say whatever it wanted. My family could tell whatever version of the story made them sleep at night. It didn't matter. I had built a life that was solid enough to stand on its own. I had built a fortress out of my own competence, and as I worked into the quiet hours of the morning, I realized that the best revenge wasn't destroying them. The best revenge was simply being so complete, so functional, and so happy that their absence didn't even leave a hole. I was whole, and that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me where you are listening from, whether it is your kitchen, your car, or your own workshop. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to the Monica Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people who need to hear it.